Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your Hobgoblin host Hunter, and this is day 2 of the Soulblight painting challenge. But what's better than one time sensitive and extremely difficult challenge? That's right, 2 at the same time, because I'm going to be painting these fell bats in exclusively oil paints. Did I mention I've never used oil paints? How's it going, guys? Before we get started, I have to let you know that I am in the middle of a week-long challenge where I'm going to be painting one unit from the new Soulblight Gravelords army every single day, and every day there's going to be a video out. This is day 2. If you want to see yesterday's video, go ahead and click right up there. That's going to be me painting the death rattle skeletons, and I think I did some pretty cool stuff. So today I'm going to be taking on the fell bats, and when I went and did those skeletons yesterday, I got excited and I went out, I bought a couple of oil paints so I could do some really cool oil washes with them. Then I got to thinking, what would it be like to use these things without thinning them down? Just use them out of the tube. Let's find out together. Whoa, I almost forgot. Yesterday, I said I was going to be doing some more interesting bases this time around. So before we can start slinging paint, we got to do something with these. I absolutely love cobblestone for anything fantasy. It just makes sense, doesn't it? So I'll try my hand at sculpting some with green stuff. I'm still pretty new to sculpting, but this was totally doable for me. I want to challenge you at home to try this for yourself. It's pretty fun. It's not a lot of work at all, and it really makes for an interesting piece of environment for your models. I'm going to start out by mixing up some green stuff and just squishing it onto the base. Throw it wherever it feels right. Next, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and carve in a grid. This doesn't have to be perfect. Cobblestone is, after all, just a rough, hand-shaped rock. Or oftentimes it's whatever was already in nature and just happened to fit together. Once that's done, I'm going to pull out any stones that are too small, too round, or just don't seem to fit in for whatever reason. Then I'm going to widen and bevel out the grout lines. Finally, I stab each stone gently with a pointy tool to create little pock marks in the stone, and I'm going to carve in a few cracks. The next step is to fill in the remaining areas with texture paste. I made this with a mixture of grout, sand, and brown paint. But you could just as easily use a store-bought version, like Sterling Mud by Citadel, for example. For the final touch, I pulled out a few miscast resin pieces from an old project I never finished. These will make nice gravestones and can be clipped up and broken to create a really worn-down, weathered feel. And that's the bases done. Now I just have to get everything primed up and we're ready to start painting. I want you guys to notice here that when I'm spraying the white ink, there's a lot of spider webbing and speckling going on. Normally this would be game over and it'd be prime it again, start over. But with these guys, I had an idea. I decided I'm not going to clean out my brush. I'm not going to change my needle. The speckling here is going to be a nice detail in our underpainting to help these guys look really rough and scarred and dirty. I'm going to be using pretty thin paint, so it should show up through those paints and create a nice texture for these angry feral beasts that we're painting. So let's pause for a second just to chat. I said in the intro that I've never worked with oil paints before, and obviously that's not true if you've seen my video from yesterday where I did the skeletons. I'd used oil washes on them, but that's all I've done. I've never used them for anything else. This was a little bit of a daunting task, but I really wanted to play with it and experiment and try something new. See, when I try something new, I like to go into it blind and play around, make a mess, and just kind of ruin things so I can get a feel for just how the materials work. Then I go ahead and I do my research, I get some advice, and so that's exactly what I did here. So with this first bat, I didn't thin my paints enough, my blends look pretty nasty, and the paint is caked on so thick, I don't know if it's ever going to dry. But after I did that, I painted up a second bat off camera so that I could get a feel for what was going on, and I think I came up with something pretty good. So I'm going to take you guys through that process on this third and final bat from this kit. First, I made a mixture of burnt umber, cadmium red, and yellow ochre. This was going to be my base skin tone, which I would then blend all my highlights and shadows into. With this mixture, I'm going to cover anything that isn't fur. Then, once everything was skin colored, I grabbed a dry Q-tip and started removing some paint from areas where I wanted highlights. By using a dry Q-tip and very little pressure, I ensure that I won't take away too much paint, and the highlights from the zenithal are going to show through the very thin layer of oils. Painting with oils is incredibly freeing. When you work with acrylics, everything dries so quickly. You don't have time. You're stuck either layering or rushing and trying to race the clock before time runs out on your precious wet blend. However, with oils, you can slow down, relax, take your time, and the paint's still going to be wet when you're ready for it. You'll see here that I'm going to flood these areas out with red paint. If I were to do this with acrylics, it would be game over. Time to strip the models and start again. But with oil paints, I'm taking my time, and now that I'm ready, I come back with the dry Q-tip and I can erase any paint that I don't want on the model. And I can blend the rest of it in. I really wanted the areas of the wings nearest to the body to look red and irritated, while the furthest parts of that membrane would look cold and bloodless. So once I finish up with this red, I do the same thing with phthalo blue. I also like to keep in mind when doing the wings that this is just a thin membrane. There's no muscle or bone inside, so light passes straight through. This means that anything I do to the outside of the wings, I'm going to have to replicate on the inside. But luckily, it's incredibly easy to get these blends that would normally take many attempts and cause so much frustration if we were using acrylic paints. With yellow ochre, I'm going to put a highlight through the middle of the wings and then repeat the same process of blending it in. That's honestly what most of this painting process is going to be. Put paint on, take it off, blend it out. Put paint on, take it off, blend it out. Rinse and repeat. It's a really different and unique way to approach painting. It's fun and it's relaxing. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Once I finish up with the yellow ochre, we're starting to lose some of our midtones. But no worries, we can just put it right back in and blend it out with our trusty Q-tip. I go back and forth for a while here, adding in some white on the highlights, black in the shadows, playing until I find something I'm happy with. One thing I do want to note is that I highlight the edges around any of the holes in the wings with white to make them appear scarred and dry. This is just something that I've kind of enjoyed. I think it gives a nice character to it, gives another detail to look at. I will say, however, that oils are great for these big smooth surfaces like the wings, but any fine detail work or edge highlighting is a nightmare, and I'd recommend sticking to acrylics for that stuff. For the fur, I'm going to use olive green. It's pretty dark and appears brown anyway. But since the model is so brown already, the fur should have some other tones in it, so as to distinguish it from the rest of the model, hence the green. This is also going to be highlighted with yellow ochre and then finally with white. The bases get a pretty quick and easy, fast and dirty kind of paint style. Yellow ochre goes on the gravestones, gets mostly removed with the Q-tip, and we stipple it with white. For the tree, a quick wash of olive green. The cobblestones get washed in a light green-blue mixture, and the dirt gets washed with brown, and then I put in a little bit of black where the shadows should be. So these models look pretty awesome, I would say. They definitely have more of a painterly, canvasy style to them than a more realistic one that I would normally go for. Normally I'd like to go in and pick out a couple more details, such as on the face or on the actual mechanical parts of the wings where the bones would be. But this really fast and loose kind of painting style reminds me of the old fantasy canvas paintings that maybe you would see in old D&D handbooks or on an old thrash metal band tee. On any other model, I'd go and I'd add in these details with some acrylic, but on these specific sculpts, I really enjoy that old school kind of vibe. You'll notice I didn't repaint that first bat. Even though that one was probably my favorite sculpt, my favorite pose of the three of them, I want to hang on to it. I like to have something that I can compare to as I progress and continue dabbling with oil paints. I always love to have some sort of physical representation of my progress that I can hold in my hands. Plus, I'm kind of curious to see how long it takes for that to dry. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something today, or maybe were inspired, or at least were entertained. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below, but not until after you click like and subscribe, so that you can be notified tomorrow when I post another video. Still not sure which kit I'm going to be doing, so the only way for you to find out is to come back tomorrow. And until next time, keep on crafting.